Well, it is 10:30 and it's time for uh, brainstorming the human connection. Uh, this is brought to you by the South Dakota Humanities Council. My name is Lawrence Diggs, and with us is Colby Christensen, and our guest today is Kristina Gindo. And we are going to be talking about music therapy today, and it is a conversation that kind of extends from our conversation last week about art therapy. And music, of course, is another kind of art. And we're going to be looking at maybe a different angle and different techniques and exploring what it means to be a music therapist and what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish. So I would like to remind everyone that this is a conversation. We have a guest and we'll be having a conversation, but you're all also part of this conversation. And I'm hoping that you will not only have comments, but questions and become involved in the conversation between all of us. That's how we actually learn things, as far as I can see, is by being involved in the conversation. So sometimes, we'll have an idea, we'll have a thought, and then it'll go away. And then somebody says, oh, what do you have any questions? And then you go, oh yeah, I did have that question, but then what was it? Well, jot something down, a note or prompt or something down like that, that will help you to remember it. So when we come back to questions, or I prompt you for questions, you'll be ready to go. So with that, let's get started. Welcome, Kristina. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good, good. And we are going to start off by getting a little background on Kristina. Where did you come from? And then and then tell us how you got into this music therapy business, and just give us a little bit of 50,000-foot view of who Kristina Gindo is.
Well, originally I'm from Iowa. I grew up in eastern Iowa. We moved up to South Dakota. My husband worked at Daktronics, so that's how we got up here. I became interested in music therapy. I loved music, loved singing, but didn't want to perform and wanted to help people. So I asked to observe a music therapist, and in the Quad Cities, they have a nice group of music therapists. So I did observe one at an adult daycare setting. And after that, I knew that was what the path I wanted to take.
You were playing music before that. What were you doing before you got into that music therapy business?
Well, I was always singing. As a young child, I tried to write a couple songs. Like I remember the first song I tried to write, I think in third grade. And I started voice lessons and kept doing that and was in choir and involved with the arts. So that's what I was involved with. I played tenor sax, which I still do play that a little bit. So with Mardi Gras coming up, I'll bring my sax and we'll do a little conga line in the care centers. It's always fun. But mostly vocalist. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, tell us a little bit about what a music therapist does.
So music therapy is an allied healthcare profession. So we go into all healthcare settings and education settings. So like I had mentioned, I previously worked with chemotherapy patients at the Cancer Institute for 2 years, worked with hospice organizations and playing for hospice patients. I worked with after school programs, worked with veterans. So the value is not in the performance, it's in us modifying music to reach the needs of the individual patient or client, much like you had, I'm sure, discussed with art therapy. So we do that throughout all the healthcare settings. If it's a physical goal, emotional goal, cognitive goal. I do a lot of groups because of the cost effectiveness of groups. And so we do write goals. So we use music to elicit blank, and then you evaluate that with the music. So if that's recalling 2 out of 3 lyrics correctly, or training someone with autism to respond appropriately in a social setting through a song, and giving them a song to remember that they sing in their head during a social scenario to help them navigate that. So it's very varied, just like most therapies are, but we use music for an emotional, physical, social, cognitive, or academic goal.
You mentioned that you modify the music. Can you talk a little bit about what modification would look like, feel like, sound like?
Do you have like a setting you have in mind for that question, or no
Not
scenario?
necessarily. I'm just trying to get the 50,000-foot view first.
Okay, sure.
Then I'll throw in some trick settings after
Okay. Yeah, so they're like in a hospice situation, of course, we know, how beautiful music is at the end of life, through different stories and things like that. But as a music therapist, I would come in and kind of assess or evaluate um, how the caregivers might need to be supported. So, or how the patient needs to be supported. So I may ask the caregivers to join in and singing with me, so that maybe the patient, they're feeling anxious, so they feel more emotional support. I might, a lot of times slow down the music to help them, as their breathing rate is definitely, slow, becoming labored and slowing down. So I'll start out and match their rate, and then kind of slow it down further, especially if they're kind of struggling with breathing. I'll invite the family. Is there something, a message you'd like to send to your mom today? And, we love her. And then I'll kind of improvise and sing that. And I'll say like the daughter, the child's name, and choose a song. Do you have a memory with music with your mother? And they'll say, like, a lot of people say that their parents used to sing "Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree." They always remember that one World War song. So I'll sing that song and ask them, what was that memory like, and try and elicit some of that support for both the patient and the caregivers.
Mhm. When you're doing that, of course, you're trying to connect them with their families. Are there other things that happen with the patients? I guess you can refer to them as patients since you're in a medical setting.
Yeah. So let's see, I'm trying to think of kind of a different scenario. Like with children, maybe. So with children, like with autism, a lot of times they experience sensory overload. And so if I see, like, I have one client kind of getting overstimulated and running around, having a hard time regulating, then I'll start with a faster rhythm, like on the drum, and just play that, and invite him to join me to kind of just synchronize to that rhythm. Rhythm is such a huge, important part of the human body and the human mind. And they say we learn rhythm from our mother's heartbeat. We hear our mother's heartbeat, and that's where we get that sense of rhythm. And so that's like one scenario. Right now, I'm working to be certified in music therapy assisted childbirth, in which we support mothers who are laboring. And we use rhythm immensely because of the breathing that the mothers need to do to get that oxygen to help support labor. So singing a chant, breathing in that rhythm, using specific songs that we have basically already set up to get them through the different stages of labor. So we have different music for active stages of labor versus getting to the end, breathing the baby down, and then having the baby. So it can change by moment. Like you come in with an idea, but it changes quite a bit, and you try and modify as best you can. Sometimes I'll bring certain instruments based on what I know about the situation, or what I think I can do with different instruments, as far as that goes. So also, like with that client with autism, sometimes it's physically sharing the drum and playing the drum just to get that more regulation feeling for them.
Mhm. You mentioned a phrase that I don't think I've ever heard before, breathing the baby down. Can, can
That's
you
the
talk a little bit
idea.
about that? Yeah, well, it's like I might need to use that sometime. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works and what are we talking about?
Sure. So as the baby starts to crown and be born, that experience of breathing, that breathing is really important to time the breathing with the contractions to time that correctly to get the baby supported so he can make his entrance into the world. So the music therapy assisted childbirth focuses a lot on using music as a medicine for childbirth. And so they respect any type of anybody's labor wishes, but the music is really an effective tool for that. And it's been used for centuries before we had medication. And so I think that's where that term breathing the baby down
Oh,
kind of
okay.
comes from. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. We did have a question in our chat box, and it refers to you mentioning several organizations that you work with and different demographics, and they wanted to know, were they volunteer positions, and then what training did you get?
So music therapy, we're not volunteers. And we try and, we do charge for our services as a therapist and a professional. So music therapy training consists of going to a school with an accredited music therapy program for undergraduate studies. It's only a 4-year degree, and then you do a 6-month practicum. After that, you take a board certification exam, which is a national board certification. So that's where the credentials MTBC, that's where they come from. Right now, state licensure isn't required. And so you start in college, you go out and with another student, and you start working in the field right away under the supervision of a professor, which is really a wonderful experience. And then they train you in. So it's almost a double psychology degree. We have to take anatomy, and all our courses are mandated by our association, like other therapy professions. And so then once you get the credential, you have to take continuing eds. And we also have competencies that we have to pass. So like I had to learn how to lead a group, singing audibly and meeting all the needs, and how to be proficient in several instruments. So I play lap harp and guitar and keyboard and sing, and you have to learn how to be proficient in percussion as well. So you take like an intro to percussion course. And the reason is so that you can meet varied needs. And that's kind of a hallmark of a music therapist, is we come in with a variety of tools rather than just coming in and performing or playing one instrument.
Mm-hmm. Like, thinking of playing a different instrument, do you have an instrument nearby, or can you give us an example of a song that you might play?
Sure.
Maybe some of us need therapy, you know.
I think we all need therapy. Let's just be honest. Especially after the pandemic, I think everybody could use some therapy. Yeah, so what I will play today, I'm gonna just do a little relaxation for us with my guitar. And I have a drum here, I'll show you. I think it matches well with your background.
Yeah.
But this is called, I call it a tone drum, but actual title is a tongue drum because it has metal tongue cutouts. So we'll just see if you can kind of hear it here. Are you able to hear that sound or not? Not so much. Okay.
No.
Still not.
No. You're gonna have to bring it up to the
Bring it up.
mic, yeah, because your mic is probably a close field mic.
Yeah. No.
No.
Okay.
Can you turn your mic to?
I
Can you
can turn
the-
it up. Yeah, we'll turn it up here.
or
There.
turn the, yeah, and also turn the mic toward the. You might want to turn the mic toward it, the top of the mic toward it.
Still not.
Um,
Well, that worked. I did it before, but maybe I need to hit it harder.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, so we'll just do some breathing with this drum, and then and we'll make it really brief. Then I'm gonna transition to the guitar and
Okay.
we'll do some imagery. So go ahead and get as comfortable as you can in your settings, the chairs you're in. Some of you look very comfortable already. Just relax. And begin to breathe in and out. And in, out. Close your eyes if you'd like. Breathe in, out. Breathe in and out. Continue to breathe deeply. Find the grounding where you're sitting. Next, we'll hear the guitar.
So that was very interesting. Unfortunately we couldn't hear the.
Oh, you couldn't hear it at all?
Well, we heard just some. It kept getting clipped. You know, it's
Oh.
like the top one.
Okay.
And this may be a function of the microphone to in the noise canceling part.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. Mhm.
Yeah, the noise canceling part, it wants to knock out all of the things that's not
Everything.
anything that's not in the human voice range, it tends to want to eliminate. So
Okay. Well, it was really good, and now you're really relaxed. Can
fast
you hear?
forward.
Fast forward to being super relaxed. Can you hear the guitar then?
Kind of. It doesn't do it justice, but
Okay, I'll turn it up.
Okay,
Now?
now that's a
Okay,
thing.
good.
You're gonna have to electrify your tongue drum.
Yeah, can you work on that for me? All right, so you can hear the guitar, so we'll just basically start over. So take deep breaths in and out. And in and out. Again, in and out. Allow yourself to relax. Give yourself permission to take this time. Focus on your breathing. Breathe in and out. Accept yourself just the way you are. How the way you feel in this moment is just okay. And let the music just take you wherever you need to go today. Continue to breathe in and out. Close your eyes, release your muscle tension. You know where it is. Take a deep breath in and release that outward. Listen to the music in my voice and let it take you wherever you need to go today. Focus on a word of where you'd like to be in your mind, in your body, your intention of what you'd like for yourself. Think of that word right now. Allowing yourself to feel capable and strong to achieve that word. Listen to the music and let it support you. Continue to focus on that word. Continue to breathe deeply. deep breath.
Hey. So that gives us a good kind of an idea of what at least a short form of
Yeah.
a session you might do. One of the questions that we had that came from one of our esteemed panel is, are you able to charge through like insurance, or how do people get to bill? How do you bill them for your services?
Well, insurance is difficult to work with since they usually require a state licensure for therapists. But so it's mostly cash pay, I guess you could call it, but the price is pretty low since we're not required to have a master's. And also since it is usually private pay, our rates are not as high. We do take, like through the state of South Dakota, they have some programs for folks with disabilities that we are funded through. A lot of times foundations, like if it's through an organization, a foundation will pay for my services, or it'll come out of just like an operational budget is kind of how it goes through an organization. So private pay is usually, it's usually out of pocket.
This brings us to an opportunity to open it up to everyone. If anyone has any questions, comments that you can share with us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Marge.
Okay, I worked in a nursing home for many years. And I remember one of the residents, very elderly man, and not that he was agitated or anything like this, but his family, I think probably 24 hours a day, played quiet hymn music. And it just kept him, very, very calm. And the family also, was very calm. Visitors would come, and I even enjoyed going in the room just to, still my mind.
Yeah.
And soft music is very wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yes.
work with a lot of care centers because there is such a need at the end of life. We go through all kinds of things as our body, goes through different health needs and stuff. So, there's a lot of stories of people who can't talk anymore. And I've seen it too within hospice. They can't talk, or cognitively, there's not a lot of response there, but they're able to sing songs or play like they used to play the organ. They can still play piano. And that has to do with the way music is processed. So it goes all throughout the brain, and then it goes right in the amygdala and the limbic system, your primal area. It sticks with you. So right at the brain stem, music is really powerful for the brain. It's just a hybrid for learning, and the language ability can be totally unable to function, but the rest can function. And Gabby Gifford, she's able to regain her speech with a music therapist, help her, worked with a speech pathologist, and they helped her regain her speech. So it definitely sticks with you, and is so powerful in the elderly years.
Mhm. Tom, you had a question or a comment?
Right. How many music therapists do we have in the state of South Dakota? And what institutions in the state of South Dakota have music therapists on staff?
So there's not very many of us. Big shocker, right? But there have been more and more. So it's good news that we're like a couple of new therapists have just gotten certified. I think total we have, I don't want to quote the wrong number, but most of the therapists are in Sioux Falls. there's a private practice in Sioux Falls that operates. Avera Behavioral Health has a couple, and like I said, the Cancer Institute, Avera Hospice started a new position. They have a therapist there in Sioux Falls. There's one that works out in the Black Hills. As far as my area, kind of Brookings and on up, there's really not anyone. North Dakota had a music therapy program in their college, which they, it's inactive now, but there are a lot of music therapists in North Dakota as well. So as far as music therapists on staff, there's really not many here in South Dakota, basically due to the funding. I think Avera has the most that they have on staff
Anyone
for
else
now.
have? Yeah, for
For
now.
now.
So far.
Yeah.
Anyone else have questions, comments about music therapy or? Yes, go ahead, Misty.
Just curious if it's a little bit more of do you do more weekly sessions? Or do you ever get calls where you're kind of on that on demand where they call you and they have a loved one in their passing on phase, for instance, and helping them pass on? I'd just be curious to kind of see what that looks like for you.
Yeah, so it is different. So like with care centers, I now say a minimum of every other week. It just takes so long for them to recognize who I am, what we're doing if it's less than that. And I do want to make progress with them. And it was interesting with the COVID break, I came back and I could tell I hadn't been there to visit. So that's kind of with the care centers. Other than that, I do for individuals, it's like based on assessment, but I do, as needed. So, hospice has someone that really loves music, or maybe they don't have a huge love for music, but they're just not responding to much else. They seem kind of depressed. Then I will come in and see clients that way. So I really vary quite a bit. I've done so many different things with funding and with what people have available. So we try and start out with something and try and grow it and see how it works with that organization.
Polly, did you have something you wanted to?
I did, thank you. I just joined, I'm sorry, I was in class. I was just wondering if music I'm a teacher, I'm a reading specialist, and I feel like music is very calming, soothing, mood enhancing to me. I was just wondering if there was a link to learning with, for example, reading with music.
Yeah, so language and music, there's a book, what's it called? Language, Music, and the Brain by Patel is a really good book. And my mother's a speech pathologist, so I've always been interested in language and music. And it is crazy how closely the two are linked together. So with reading, like when I've worked on reading different things, we've done syllables and rhythm, kind of the phonemic part with rhythm. And as far as, reading goes, that helps a lot. Working on the different vowels. So when our brains sing, it's using different parts of the brain than when it reads. And it's the way music supports the brain. So it's a little bit easier because it slows down the rate of speech when you're singing, and you're also using more, you're using breath support. It's like a physical activity. So those are kind of the links that I'm aware of that are really close to rhythm, but it does help a lot with reading because it kind of takes off the cognitive load to give them those cues you're trying to teach them, but in like a different way where it's not, they don't have to think about it as hard.
Oh, okay. Nice.
If that makes
Thank
sense.
you. No, who did you say that Language, Music, and the Brain, and who is it by?
Patel, Patel.
Okay.
And Dr. Oliver Sacks, he worked with a music therapist. I don't remember when it was. He was highly supportive of music therapists. He was working with traumatic brain injured patients, and he's got a lot of literature on music that's really good. He's a huge supporter of music therapy, which has been really nice. And he'll talk about the brain and music. I forget his last book he wrote about it, but the title of it. But if you just Google, I think it's Musicophilia is the name of it. He's got really great resources. And I do work, like on a consultative level too with organizations if they think that's something they need.
Oh, okay. Thank you so
I would,
much.
I would highly recommend Dr. Oliver Sacks's book.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far as to say, start there, and you will get not only lots of references, but it will give you a really good 50,000-foot view of like how the brain works with music. And he's done a few books and done quite a bit of research, and I think you'll find that very helpful.
Okay, so musicophilia is
Musicophilia. If you just Google Oliver Sacks,
Yep,
yeah, Colby's got something he wants to say.
Colby.
I was just going to say, both of those books that Kristina just referenced, I put links to those in the chat. So for anyone who's interested,
oh,
it's
thank
right
you.
there. So you're welcome.
He's also got some YouTube
Yes.
clips that are really good and movies, but it's just so like there's different theories about how even at a very young age, how music develops. We learn from birds. It's really interesting to read what he has put out there and the research he's done on music and the brain.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not only for kids in crisis or something like that. It's for all of us. I got into his work as a musician to understand, like, well, what am I doing when I create music? It's going to change the brain. How can I be more intentional about it? And his music, I mean, his work really gave me a lot of insight into making the kind of music that I try to make.
Oh,
Mr. Mr. You were going to say something?
Just thank you for doing this and sharing this with us. I mean, I know it can feel maybe a little discouraging if it's not recognized on a grander scale, but I work at the library here in Winter, South Dakota, and I'm always looking for ways to fill gaps and needs in the community. And I don't know if there's suggestions of what that looks like statewide, how we could better support you and what that looks like. We do have a community connections with disabled people here. So I'm always trying to look at what can we bring to our community, what that looks like, and any suggestions you may have is
would
welcomed.
say for the library, a real easy one would be a early childhood music class. I don't know if you have anything like that now. So I reference like my mother. We're also working on to work on language development with music early on, because the majority of our brain development happens in those major years between 0 and I think it's 0 to 5 or 0 to 3 is when it is. So and they're fun, you get a lot of participants. There's different curriculums you can use or different people you could have lead the classes. The biggest takeaway I would say is try and have them so that they have access to that music later. So those parents are accessing that music and using it all the time with their kids, which the kids will request it all the time on repeat. That's just a really easy and fun community outreach to buy some instruments, to have, if they want to purchase, different recommendations for instruments, because it starts that language learning. And our philosophy is that it could help fill in the gaps if we had more access to early childhood music classes where there's kind of the language learning gaps. with some of our children, especially at that crucial time. That's right when they all need a lot of enrichment and the TV's on a lot at some places. So that would be a really easy class. And there's a couple different suggestions. If you want to email me, I could send you a few different ideas that may be available in your area, or if you know of someone who can host those.
It would be a good idea maybe to put your contact information in the chat, so those who are interested can copy and paste it. Or don't forget that there's those 3 little dots down in the right hand lower corner of the chat, where you can actually they've moved it now. It's just kind of in the center after the little smiley face. If you click on that, you can save the chat. Okay, so and then it'll just post to your usually desktop, or sometimes in the download, depending on this operating system you're using. But yeah, those are good resources. Anyone else have any questions, comments, additions?
Kristina, thank you for showing us how music therapy works this morning. Your example was beautiful, and
Thank you.
I sat here in my chair and I thought, oh, this is real pleasant. I mean, how could I not want to do this? So my question to you is, when you deal with people who have chronic ailments, such as post-traumatic brain injuries or dementia or mental illness of some type, how can you differentiate your acute effects from the chronic effects of your music therapy? How do you know that you're successful long-term in people who have chronic disorders?
That's a good question. Wow, I like it. I mean, that's difficult because we know it's an uphill battle, right? Chronic health needs. I don't know. What comes to mind is, I think as our bodies deal with so many challenges, we do seek our inner strength, right? Our inner strength, our kind of psyche, our soul, and that's where music lives. And so I guess I know I've made an impact if they remember a song and they've sung it and they're having a really bad day. They're really sick. Like I think of my cancer patients who are just really sick from chemo. They're getting bad reports, but they remember this moment and this song, and it just, music just sits with you. It's kind of this thing in your psyche that it sits with you. And even when you're sick, you can kind of carry that. You can carry that with you. And it's just a powerful, positive thing kind of within your deep memory. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess I asked the question knowing that I probably won't get an absolute answer to it, but I think if we as a society develop a process in which music therapy is part of our education or part of our societal way of dealing with problems, we need to put forward some of those questions to guide us. And we obviously live in a time now where mental illness and knowing how each of us is feeling and thinking and hurting is quite evident through the internet, and whether ramifications of our violent society is such that we we're in need of some methods to help us get through this period. So does music therapy offer us an answer to some of these things? Or it seems like we're just at the forefront of a music therapy process, and maybe 10 years from now, you'll be the head of the music therapy department in the state of South Dakota. And so, who knows how this will evolve, but those are
Yeah.
questions that
I would encourage you to, so if you go to www.musictherapy.org or just start Googling, so music therapy, a lot of people think it's a new age term. We all need therapy. That's music therapy. So it is an evidence-based profession, and we have a lot of research behind us. And so we do take measures of, or we can take measures of heart rate, respiration rate, like with the labor, the fetal heart monitoring. There's a lot of like research on, they found like less cortical stress in the salivary glands after drumming groups versus before. So if you Google, there's a lot of research behind us, and there are definitive measures for the effects of music therapy within different populations. And so you can kind of go through and check those out, which that should be helpful.
Well, thanks. This morning was great, and I appreciate your time, and you've illuminated a new area of questioning for me, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Polly, did you have something? You were Misty or?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you, first of all. It's been enlightening. My question, I guess, would be where to start. I'm not musical myself, and I'm sure all of you are musical, but is there a way to, what's the easiest way to start something like that with the kids, with the, does that make any sense?
Sure.
Like, I'm obviously not going to sing an opera, you know?
I don't think they want to hear an opera.
Yeah, I don't know what would help them the most or where to even begin. And maybe those books that you mentioned will help some.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to email me, I could maybe come up with some ideas for you. For kids, the next thing akin to music is movement. And kinesthetic learning with what you're trying to teach, I think would be super important. So I'm sure there's different curriculums and things out there, but if you can think of kinesthetic ways to show what you're trying to teach them that goes with music, that would be super powerful for them, and they can participate it with hands-on learning. So what's an example of some of the things you're trying to teach?
Well, right now I work with the lowest of the low kids in our school. So like something that I am really struggling with right now is short vowels. Like they, an a is the same as an I, is the same as an and they just don't, we read and to the point that they've memorized the words on the pages, but
what comes to my mind is rap. That's what
Okay.
I think. When I think of short vowels, I think of rap. And that's just, rap is really hot right now in music. It's motivating for them. If you could write a rap, short vowel rap, and have that in the rap, that would be really important. I think as long as the music, so like the function of the music has to support the goal, so it's not secondary. So a lot of times people will write a multiplication rap. Well, me personally, of course, that I was not a math person. So it was a super long rap. It was just like music was secondary. The music didn't function to support what you're trying to teach. Music is there as it's going, but it doesn't have a purpose. Like there isn't a rhythm that goes with, like a beat for whatever, 3 times 2, or You know what I'm saying, where the music has to actually function to support what you're trying to teach, where it's not just going on at the same time.
That's
I have
interesting.
I have a question for you, Polly. In the students that you work with,
Mhm.
do you as a routine give them hearing tests?
Yes, all of our, yes, I do. They have hearing tests. Many of them have speech issues.
Yep.
And though their hearing tests come back fine, I have always learned that the more allergies that a person has, or the more ear infections you had as a child, the more likely you are to not be able to understand the different sounds of the letters. So their hearing seems to be fine.
Well, when I say hearing, I didn't only mean the ability to pick up sound,
Right.
but how you hear the sound. I noticed, for example, when I was teaching English in Japan, that a lot of the problems that the students had in saying a word is that they didn't hear difference. For example, they can't hear the difference between L and R. So,
Right.
and if you turn them around and ask them, which one did I say? They can't, there's just,
Tell
it
you.
sounds like the same. B's and V's also, so they sound the same. So if someone's trying to reproduce a sound that they cannot discern, it's going to be a little tricky, you know? So it's just something I thought I would share with you.
That's interesting. I've never thought about turning it around like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
How they're
And-
hearing it.
That's right. And ask them, give them some kind of measure to write something on the board, or that's what I would have people come up to the blackboard and say, okay, you turn your back to me. I'm going to say a word and you tell me if it started with B or V, or if it started with R or L. And then the whole class, you could see their eyes go, what? What are you saying? You know, and it can be quite a problem. So I think that something like that, just to discern if they're hearing the difference between it. It may not be that they can't say it. It's just they can't say it because they can't hear it. And so that would suggest a whole different approach to getting them to read that.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Misty, did you have something that you wanted to say?
I think that covered a lot of it. Just kind of talking about that we live in such a quantitative world, and when you were talking about when they can put it numbers to it to validate that, like the breathing rate and all of that. But I also was going to be a little silly and say, do you ever play AC/DC when their baby's coming? It'd be interesting to hear what music sounds like.
That
at
would be
moment.
The baby
Well,
might want to go back.
I mean, they have done research that what the mom has going on outside of the womb is what the baby likes. So, and I watched a study where the baby didn't like classical because mom liked hard rock and went to hard rock concerts. So after the baby was born, that's what made her sleep, was hard rock. So
There you go.
I mean, it's not what I would choose, but everybody has different preferences.
Yeah, that's right. Blame your mom. She didn't-
Yeah, that's right. Mom's to blame for everything.
Any other questions? Well, I'd like to continue here with kind of where you think the industry of music therapy is going. Well, what's the future for that?
Well, there's been a huge increase in music therapists, and interest has increased. NPR is like our best friend. There's always a story on music therapy, which is wonderful. So I think that it will become more mainstream and recognized in the future. I do think that we're always going to face funding challenges for a long time. And like the arts does in general. But I think that as more and more awareness develops, people kind of normalize what it is and know the benefits that we will have more music therapists and more music therapy programs. In South Dakota, we face kind of a unique challenge like everybody does because we are so spread out, and kind of the driving distance gets to be cost prohibitive sometimes. Like someone wanted me to come to Aberdeen, it's quite a ways. So that's a huge, but now with technology, that has helped a lot where we're able to reach places we weren't before. And other organizations like the VA has kind of launched a lot of new music therapy positions across the nation. So overall, we're progressing. I think that as music therapists, it is important to continue with our education and remember the competencies that we are trained in, because that is what makes us unique from performing and where our strengths lie. So that's something that's important, is kind of staying on the cusp of the innovation, and just always praying for an administrator that's ready to be on the cutting edge, and do pilots. So overall, I mean, South Dakota is super supportive. Just, like with everything, the funding needs to follow. But if people want to pay for something, they generally will find a way.
Yes.
So that's a benefit.
Mhm. I would agree with you 100%. Misty, you were going to add something?
A point of encouragement, like in the marketing world, for instance, they always say, show the logic, show the facts. But bottom line, when push comes to shove, people are buying emotion, based on emotion and music. There isn't anything more emotional or touching than a song. If you want to go clean your house, you put on this. If you're going to go and, something else, listen to another song that brings back a memory and you're flooding with tears. So I don't think it gets any more real than that. And so I think there's a huge opportunity here. It just like with anything, it takes that time. But when we can remember that, there's huge power in what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. And I was going to say something on the same lines, that it's about packaging too, and that's the marketing edge that Misty was referring to. A lot of the packaging of or repackaging your industry, I think. I mean, that comes with time, as you see, and it occurs to you that, oh, people don't get this. And if I'm thinking of administrators, for example, they may not have heard of Oliver Sacks. And then, even a short video of, a clip of him talking about the importance of it, and maybe a book with your card in it, I think would serve, the more people who hear about his work, I think the more people will be interested in your work.
Well, events like this definitely help. So thank you so much. For somebody will say, oh, I heard so-and-so, she's from by Brookings. That helps a lot. Thank you so much for doing that.
Good. Well, we've come to the end of our road, so to speak. And thank you again, Kristina, for coming and joining us and sharing your story and your profession and the work you do. I'm certain that many people have benefited from this conversation. And thank you, all of you, for joining us. And we'll remind you, next week, same time, same station, we will be here again with another episode of Brainstorming the Human Connection. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.